Assalamualaikum dan hai semua. Kali ini aku nak bawa korang pergi jalan-jalan ke sekitar area Bukit Bintang, Kuala Lumpur. Kali ini aku nak tengok suasana Bukit Bintang di waktu malam. Aku pun dah lama dah tak pergi Bukit Bintang. Jom malam ni kita pergi jalan-jalan ke area Bukit Bintang, Kuala Lumpur. Lagi aku nak kena survey lagi kat kawasan Bukit Bintang ni, ada loten apa semua. Tengok pun tempat pun macam dah lain dah. Tengok lama aku tak pergi, so kita round-round lagi. Okay, dah puas jalan-jalan dah dekat area Bukit Bintang. Aku rasa dah tak banyak benda sangat dah. Tengok orang-orang dah lagi tak banyak benda sangat lagi. Aku nak bersya-usya. So sampai sini je lah. So apa-apa pun korang subscribe ke channel aku, and then tekan button notification untuk dapatkan video terbaru aku. Okay, Assalamualaikum semua dan ciao.
Akhirnya pada 1 November 1998, Darul Quran ditempatkan ke kampus tetap di Kompleks Darul Quran di Ampang Pecah, Kuala Kubu Baru, Selangor, sehingga hari ini.
Tuan-tuan yang dirahmati Allah, apa itu sebenarnya perkemat? Jadi perkemat ini sebenarnya adalah persatuan kebajikan Mahat Tahfiz Darul Quran, yang mana kami sebagai persatuan perkemat ini menjaga lebih kurang dalam 1,000 orang pelajar tahfiz yang belajar di sini. Di sini banyak program-program yang perkemat anjurkan khas untuk kebaikan pelajar-pelajar di sini. Antaranya program yang kami adakan adalah program yang berunsurkan kebajikan, program yang fokus kepada Al-Quran, program yang memantapkan lagi dari segi hafalan Al-Quran dan sebagainya. Jadinya kami memerlukan dana yang banyak untuk menyempurnakan ataupun untuk melaksanakan program-program yang kami lakukan di sini. Antara program-program yang telah kami lakukan ataupun perkemat laksanakan seperti sukan hufaz atau lebih dikenali sebagai sukfaz, yang mana program ini khas untuk sukan kepada pelajar-pelajar hufaz, program diploma. Kemudian kami juga ada pertandingan-pertandingan Al-Quran seperti hafazan Al-Quran, musabaqah Al-Quran dan sebagainya. Dan juga kami juga fokus kepada keilmuan pelajar di sini. Jadi sebab itu kami melaksanakan daurah-daurah kitab, daurah-daurah akidah dan sebagainya. Jadi di sini pelbagailah banyak lagi program yang menarik. Jadi untuk program-program ini terlaksana, kami memerlukan dana yang besar daripada pihak-pihak tertentu, khususnya untuk tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang ingin berkhidmat kepada kami. Banyak persoalan daripada orang luar, kenapa kami masih memerlukan sumbangan sedangkan kami dah dapat allowance. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang dirahmati, sebenarnya kami telah memanfaatkan allowance yang kami dapat untuk kegunaan yuran, untuk membeli buku, muzakirat dan sebagainya. Namun kami masih tidak mampu untuk allocate dana untuk melaksanakan program-program besar. Jadi oleh sebab itulah kami sangat mengharapkan dana daripada tuan-tuan dan puan-puan untuk melaksanakan program-program besar kami. Oleh itu saya dengan rendah hatinya mengajak tuan-tuan untuk sama-sama membantu kami. Jadi ayuh tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang pemurah, sama-sama kita bantu untuk melaksanakan program-program pelajar tahfiz di sini dengan memberi sedikit infak yuran serendah RM30. Semoga sedikit sebanyak dengan yuran ataupun duit-duit daripada tuan-puan membawa 1,000 kebaikan untuk kami pelajar-pelajar tahfiz di sini. Wallahi hanya senya Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala yang mampu untuk membayar segala kebaikan yang telah dilakukan oleh tuan-puan. InsyaAllah.
Antara kemudahan asas yang telah disediakan adalah Dewan Kuliah, Makmal Komputer, Makmal Al-Quran, Makmal Bahasa, Perpustakaan, Surau, Asrama Lelaki dan Perempuan, Dewan Makan, Auditorium, Masjid dan lain-lain. Kemudahan riadah turut disediakan seperti padang permainan untuk sepak takraw, bola tampar, badminton, bola jaring, bola keranjang dan trek jogging.
Orang selalu kata, orang yang fakuat ni mesti bandar lemau kan. Kita semestinya macam tu. Daripada kami perkemat sendiri, kami menganjurkan pelbagai program dan aktiviti yang melibatkan ukhuwah dan juga kebajikan sesama pelajar Darul Quran sendiri. Jadi daripada kami perkemat akan menganjurkan satu program yang dinamakan sukan hufaz ataupun sukfaz yang dianjurkan secara tahunan. Mesti nak tahu kan apa itu sukfaz? Jadi tuan-puan, kalau nak tahu, pelajar-pelajar di sini bukan saja mahir dalam bidang Al-Quran, tetapi juga berbakat dalam bidang sukan. Dalam penganjuran sufaz kali ini, pelbagai acara indoor dan outdoor akan dipertandingkan seperti bola sepak, bola tampar, futsal, badminton, pingpong dan pelbagai lagi acara. Maka, bagi menjayakan program kali ini, kami perkemat memerlukan dana yang besar untuk membeli pelbagai peralatan sukan dan kelengkapan yang lainnya. Diharapkan dengan penganjuran sufaz pada kali ini, ia dapat memberi manfaat kepada ahli perkemat khususnya, bukan sahaja dalam bidang Al-Quran, juga cergas dalam bidang sukan. Oleh itu, marilah sama-sama tuan dan puan di luar sana, sama-sama kita menyumbang serendah RM30 kepada perkemat. Dan kalau nak bagi lebih pun, Alhamdulillah, kami persilakan sangat-sangat. Semoga ianya menjadi saham akhirat bagi kita bersama. Wallahu a'lam.
Terletak indah di kaki banjaran Titiwangsa bertentangan dengan bekas lombong warisan penjajah British, Masjid Darul Quran Jabatan Kemajuan Islam Malaysia, JAKIM, di Kuala Kubu Baru, Selangor, dilihat sebagai sebuah masjid yang sangat mendamaikan. Ruang solat masjid juga dijadikan sebagai kelas bagi mata pelajaran tertentu serta lokasi pelajar mengaji Al-Quran. Masjid Darul Quran JAKIM turut menerima jemaah daripada pelajar Maktab Rendah Sains Mara, MRSM, Kuala Kubu Baru dan pelajar Institut Kemahiran Belia Negara yang datang menunaikan solat Jumaat dan juga solat fardu yang lain secara berjemaah.
Pusat Pengajian Raudhatul Ulum terletak di Taman Delima Jaya, Dengkil Sepang, Selangor. Pengajian ini telah ditubuhkan pada 22 Jun 2016 secara rasmi atas dasar untuk menyahut seruan kerajaan melahirkan generasi muda yang berilmu, takwa, cemerlang serta berwawasan. Antara program pembelajaran yang ditawarkan oleh Ma'at ini adalah mengajar membaca dan menghafaz Al-Quran, mengajar ilmu agama Islam dan program pembinaan akhlak untuk para pelajar. Kami telah menemu bual Ustaz Muhammad Yusof Selamat yang merupakan pengasas dan pengetua Pusat Pengajian Raudhatul Ulum atau lebih dikenali sebagai mudir.
Saya pun ada hasrat awal tu memang nak buka tahfiz sendiri. Bila banyak perkara-perkara yang saya tak berkenan tempat masa lama kan. Pelajar-pelajar kejap-kejap diberhentikan, jadi saya macam mana itu saya fikirkan dengan rumah saya, isteri saya pun ustazah mengajar sini juga. Mesyuarat dengan dia, kita buat sendiri madrasah lah, tubuhkan madrasah sendiri. Daripada 2016 saya keluar daripada madrasah yang lama tu. Mula-mula sebelum sini siap tu saya buka di sewa di Dengkil, sewa di Simi Banglo sana dua biji lah. Lepas tu saya operasi sana 2 tahun. Apabila sana siap sini 2018 saya pindah kemari sampai sekarang. Jadi saya punya hasrat tu kepada anak-anak yang di luar sana yang tak pandai mengaji apa tu tercapai lah. Kita khasnya lagi di orang kampung sinilah. Banyak saya temukan memang daripada sekolah-sekolah pun lebih kurang dalam tak sampai separuh yang boleh mengaji. Jadi ini hasrat saya supaya budak-budak ni semua dapat belajar Al-Quran. Walaupun tak jadi hafiz tapi boleh baca Al-Quran. Itu saya punya nasi. Kalau tahfiz-tahfiz yang lain, budak-budak tak boleh baca Al-Quran, dia keluarkan. Dia tak bagi. Jadi saya punya hasrat tak. Saya kan walaupun dia tak boleh hafiz tapi dia boleh baca Al-Quran setelah dia keluar daripada sini. Itulah matlamat saya pertama.
Kami sempat menemu bual dengan seorang anak yatim yang merupakan juga salah seorang pelajar ma'had tahfiz ini.
Saya masuk madrasah ni memang niat untuk belajar lah, untuk jadi hafiz Al-Quran. Hasrat saya masuk sini untuk mengembirakan mak ayah saya dan berhasrat untuk jadi orang yang berguna lah. Perasaan saya waktu masuk sini, saya gembira sangat dapat masuk ke madrasah. Saya masuk sini waktu tu ayah saya ada lagi, tapi bila waktu ayah saya ada berhenti tu, saya macam sedih tu ada lah. Rasa macam nak belajar pun malas sikit. Tapi bila fikir balik, kalau saya tak belajar pun bukan saya boleh buat apa. Jadi saya cuba untuk belajar bersungguh-sungguh supaya ayah saya kat sana.
Namun menurut seorang lagi pelajar tahfiz, saudara Luqman Al-Hakim Muhammad Azrin mengadu bahawa segala prasarana dan kemudahan pusat pengajian Raudhatul Ulum masih belum mencukupi lagi.
Saya harapkan untuk sesi pelajaran 23 ada baik jugalah kalau ada pengangkutan yang selesa untuk ke jemputan ke apa kan, untuk solat Jumaat terutamanya, dan juga asrama kalau dapat diluaskan ataupun, sebab sekarang ni padat, agak ada nampak sepah kalau sama ada ditambah lagi asrama ke, biar penduduk dalam satu asrama atau dom tu tak terlalu banyak, jadi mungkin lebih selesa agaknya. Antara mungkin saya harapkan mungkin antaranya tandas ke, ataupun tempat belajar yang lebih luas sikit lah, dia tak terlalu sempit.
Itulah sekarang ni dia kalau main tu memang kita anjurkan supaya dia buat riadah petang-petang supaya dia kesihatan badan dia. Tapi malangnya kita tak ada padang yang sempurna, atas batu-batu pasir kan, kadang-kadang main luka dan sebagainya. Itulah kita ada juga untuk offer kepada masyarakat di luar untuk sama-sama infak untuk sempurnakan padang lah. Saya sekarang ni kalau hari Ahad pasal kita sewa futsal di luar. Di luar tu memang baran untuk orang awam dia mahal RM60 1 jam, tapi untuk pelajar dia bagi RM23. Jadi kita tiap-tiap minggu lah kita pergi bawa di luar.
Untuk yang main padang, kadang bila main padang tu memang kawasan berbatu kan. Memang kebanyakannya luka tu memang akan ada lah. Kalau teruk sikit, cuma kalau terjatuh kan, lutut tu luka, tangan tercalar sikit ke apa. Kalau indoor main pingpong dalam tempat makan tu je lah. Main takraw pun atas simen ni, atas tahan jugalah selalunya pun.
Inilah suasana dewan makan dan dapur yang sering digunakan oleh pelajar tahfiz untuk memasak dan menjamu selera. Pelajar ini juga belajar memasak dan menghidang. Di samping itu, mereka boleh makan secara bersama. Bagi mereka, hidangan seperti ini sudah pun cukup memadainya. Bagaimanapun, Ustaz Muhammad Yusof meminta orang ramai dan pihak berkuasa untuk turun membantu membina lebih banyak kemudahan pusat ma'had tahfiz ini.
Memang ada keperluan-keperluan tu untuk kita yang untuk anak-anak yang tak mampu tu kan. Kita akan belikan cadar, belikan katil, tilam sebagainya, itu keperluan juga untuk siapan pelajar baru masuk. Peralatan seperti meja, rehal dan sebagainya. Sebelum ni pun kita minta daripada orang ramai juga, ada yang minta. Tapi memang mudah untuk meja-meja rehal untuk orang untuk berwakaf ni memang cepat je. Sebab untuk kita dapatkan begitu. Bahan-bahan pelajar sekarang ni alhamdulillah lah, bolehlah kata cukup. Itulah kami mengharaplah pada masyarakat di luar kalau dapat sama-sama menanam saham untuk akhirat mereka. Jadi kita offer supaya dapat sama-sama berkongsi lah kan, dapat dunia dan akhirat. Pelajar-pelajar dapat, walaupun kita tak ada anak yang hafiz Al-Quran, tapi kita bagi sumbangan untuk pelajar hafiz, alhamdulillah dia akan dapat saham juga di akhirat, insyaAllah.
Every day I have to ride around the town. I just can't help it. I get in my truck and I ride around the whole town. I look at the little businesses. East Milton Square is made up of very small businesses, pizza shops and jewelry stores and hairdressers, and will they make it? You know, how much traffic are they getting? Early on, nothing was open. Now some things are open. Little by little, as people experience living in the COVID world and as the numbers decrease, you see more people, but you're still, normal is not there. We are the largest geographic suburb of the city of Boston, which is the capital of Massachusetts. Sometimes, from a traffic point of view, people might view it as a headache. The distance from just about anywhere in Milton to downtown Boston, whether it's the financial district, the medical district, Fenway Park, Boston Garden, is only 6 miles. The benefit of that is if you're going to work, it's a direct route in from this community that so many people live in and work in the city every day. When people talk about Milton and outsiders looking in, they often look at Milton as being an affluent, rich community. It's not. It's a working, middle-class community. It has its affluent pockets, but it's for the most part, men and women of very diverse backgrounds trying to make a good life for themselves. This pandemic isn't something like 100 inches of snow and the DPW finished it and the streets are cleared and we can go back to normalcy. People want their lives back. They want their normal back, and they're willing to fight for that. And because of that, we will win in this war. You learn how to live with it, you learn the dangers of it, and you learn the risks of it. And if people pay attention to those, then we'll be okay. Every day we go forward in this is a day closer to its termination. I think every person who's lived in the year 2020 will remember the year 2020 in their life, whether they're 10 or 90. They will remember this year.
COVID-19 is a seismic time. There's a lot of anxiety. At first there was a lot of shock. And there's a lot of wondering about how to deal with the everyday fear, the everyday anxiety, how to find themselves okay in a time where it's just a constant transformation, constant change. Right now, we have to respond to something that is affecting the human species. We have to pay attention. We have to ask ourselves, how is it that we survive together? So if we pay attention to the fact that we're all in this together, truly in this together, we will find a way through.
I was in my condo in Dorchester and watching the news, and the news was about Italy, and I think the death toll in one day had hit 600.
The numbers from Italy tonight only worsening. In fact, this was the number today, 627 people dying in just the past 24 hours, the worst yet.
It just, for whatever reason, it just brought me to tears, like automatic tears. I just couldn't believe that 600 people in a country died in one day. And I said, gosh, can that really happen in the United States?
America is now the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic.
America has passed the grim milestone of 20,500 deaths to overtake Italy as the world's worst hit nation.
Should I continue to work? Is this too dangerous? And I think many people, for good reasons, make the choice that it's simply too dangerous a setting to continue to work in.
We're trying to make decisions here to help patients based on information that's constantly changing. It was it felt very, I don't want to say scary, but it felt unwieldy. It didn't feel super stable. But on the other hand, we were all in it together. The collaboration was incredible.
Everyone was, thinking, oh my gosh, like, am I going to give my family this? Because not everyone can, be alone in an apartment. A lot of us are going home to our families. So I think that was the scariest part, changing over to a COVID floor, is just being scared every day when you're leaving work that you're leaving something on you and you're passing it, to your parents who may be high risk or older.
I'm 60 years old, and that meant for me that I was in the vulnerable group. So I stayed home. Stayed home, didn't go out the house because I didn't want to be impacted by it.
Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston is testing several people for the coronavirus after they attended a Biogen conference at the Long Wharf Marriott in Boston.
When it came to Massachusetts and the biotech conference, that's the first person that got it in Milton. I was afraid.
So as soon as I heard about the COVID-19 outbreak that was happening in China, I knew it was a matter of time before it came to Milton. It was very stressful in the health department. We're all wearing masks in the health department right now because we're in close proximity. But I just wanted to make sure I was not going to get sick. That was my main concern. I had to keep everything, the operation going, and that was my main concern.
Tonight, the death toll nationwide has now reached more than 16,000, and more than 6 million Americans have filed for unemployment in just the last week. In New York today, the governor compared the pandemic to September 11, calling it evil.
When the pandemic started, I kind of had a little inkling that something was going to happen here in the town. And it was the first time I saw people nervous, extremely nervous about what was coming down the road. You could see people's attitudes changing a little bit. People were more concerned about others getting too close, about the fear factor. It was a fear factor now. And if you look, a month and a half ago, you used to have fuzzy dice hanging from your rearview mirrors, and now you have a surgical mask hanging from your rearview mirrors. Just how it's changed so drastically in the month and a half, and how it's going to change down the road, it's an unknown factor, and people are extremely nervous still.
How soon will they go back to work? Will work look the same? Will this country look the same after this? The one thing that I have faith in is that Americans are resilient. I mean, we've faced World War, we've faced crisis, we've faced terror. We're resilient. We'll find a way.
Pre-pandemic, I think as a business, we settled in and have been in a pretty good groove for quite some time now. We were and have been thinking about, the next step in the business in terms of leadership, management, and the next step of growth. Maybe a week before things started to go really kind of hoopy, I actually got the flu myself, the regular flu. And I was about 3 or 4 days where I was home in bed and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to anything. And obviously there was coronavirus talk, but it really hadn't hit home so much yet. Things really started to surge, and I started to really pay attention to the news and what was going on and how people were acting and reacting to the news that was out there, and it was literally start to turn into a firestorm.
Worldwide this morning, growing concern over a growing health crisis, with health officials here in the U.S. moving fast to prepare for what the CDC has called an inevitable spread.
We are right now in a very active containment mode.
Thousands of Americans nationwide already under voluntary self-quarantine after returning from China, even though they don't pose any immediate risk.
It was overwhelming. Lines down the aisles, we couldn't keep the shelves stocked. We were working, all of us, 12, 14-hour days just to try to keep up what was going on. You could see customers just panic, a little bit of stress, a little bit of, not complete panic, but concern about where things were going, where we would be at, if they would have food on the table in the near future. If we were heading into doomsday type stuff.
Tonight, signs that a critical link in the nation's food supply chain might be cracking, as some meat processing plants around the country have become COVID-19 hotspots. So far, over 1,000 employees of meat processing giants like Tyson, JBS, and Smithfield have tested positive for the virus, forcing the temporary closure of at least 15 plants.
There were certainly meat shortages, and when Tyson came out with that statement that they had to close plants and that a lot of their workers were sick, it just heightens people's concerns about the food chain in general, and the meat chain was certainly impacted. I think customers had a perception that things were going to collapse, which created that scenario where people were hoarding and buying way more than they really needed. The ongoing concerns we had early on for the first month were always employee-based. Could we keep our employees safe?
A lot of people didn't feel comfortable, they were afraid, they were scared, especially the kids. Their parents were concerned about them working at the store and being in contact with a lot of people. We didn't know from day to day who we were going to have for staff. People were already frying, 5-6 days into this, and we knew if we didn't do anything to address that and address their well-being, we would be done in 2 weeks. We wouldn't have a staff. Whenever you had a break, you were washing your hands. And we implemented policies so that our front-end people would close down a register, sanitize the register, go wash their hands, come back, and every 20 minutes, half hour, we would rotate through the registers, clean and sanitize and hand washing, which we still do right now. We pretty quickly, before a lot of other places, started limiting the amount of people that were in the store at a time in terms of customers. Making that decision to limit the amount of customers in the store took a tremendous amount of pressure off the staff. It allowed us to have the flexibility to move people around and still open the doors and operate the business without the need for as much staff. In addition to that too, we implemented face masks for our employees. And shortly thereafter, we mandated the customers wear face masks as well. So everyone in the building is wearing a face mask while they're within the building. We put up plexiglass for in front of our registers for our front ends.
So everyone was scared the first, especially a few weeks there when things really started to get crazy, and probably the first month or so. And everyone was super cautious about, trying to keep their distance, and people would get, frustrated or upset if someone got too close to them. And I remember one time I was bagging an order, and a gentleman went back to get something he forgot, and I started taking groceries out of his cart for him to put it up on the register, and he came back and he really lost his mind because he was so upset that I touched his groceries. He said, "Why did you touch my food? You shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I have to put it all back now." And I tried to put him at ease and say, "Listen, someone has to touch your food. The cashier has to touch your food. The guys who put it on the shelf have to touch your food. I don't know if there's any way around that, but I understand your concerns." But there was a lot of that kind of concern and feeling about, what can I touch? What can I not touch? What am I going to get it from? There's always that concern of a second wave, and they've been talking about that, the experts, since the onset, especially come fall. I think that the procedures and policies we have in place and what we're doing now and what the governor's been doing, I think all those steps that we and the state has taken have been really positive and put us in a position where, if things do spike, I believe we can control it as long as we continue to do the things that we're doing. Everyone who stayed with us through the thick of the pandemic really stepped up. I mean, the guys were working 12, 15-hour days. They were working 6-7 days a week. Really, it was a very proud, crazy time, but as an employer, a very proud time as well, too, to see these people step up and respond the way they did. Rarely a day goes by where someone doesn't thank us for what we do. Thank us for being here, thank them for providing food for their family. So it really makes us feel like we're an important part of the community.
Nice job, guys. Don't rush. Hold it. Woo!
My name is Cindy McCarthy. This is Beth Whitney.
Hello.
We are here at Fitness Unlimited. We've both worked here for a really long time.
I grew up in Milton, born and raised, and I came here when I was 18 years old. When I graduated from college, I started teaching as an instructor here. And it's grown over the years into this amazing 18,000 square foot full facility health club that specializes in women's fitness. We have been managers here for at least 29, almost 30 years. And on February 1st, we bought Fitness Unlimited. Everything was going very well. We made a formal announcement about us purchasing the club on March 1st, and then it's all come to a screeching halt.
I am issuing the following emergency order. Effective Tuesday, March 24th at noon, all non-essential businesses shall close their physical workplaces and facilities to all workers, customers, and the public.
Here we are in our empty club, just trying to get through every day, trying to stay in touch with our members who, by the way, have been overall fantastic. And we don't think we would have made it this far without their support, both emotionally as well as financially.
When we heard the news that the gym was being sold and bought by different owners, we were all curious as to who was going to own it. And then when we found out it was Beth and Cindy who worked there, we were so excited because it is an all-women's gym. And to see women taking over a business, everyone in the gym was just ecstatic. I mean, everybody is so supportive of Beth and Cindy.
How can this be happening? We're working hand in hand with our landlord. We're working hand in hand with our bank who is holding our loan for the business. We had to lay off 95% of our entire workforce. I am scared. I mean, to say I'm not would be a lie. We're realizing that we've lost a lot of revenue, and we will lose a lot of revenue for the foreseeable future. So how can we make it all work?
The owner of Fitness Unlimited called me. I think that she thought that I could allow her to be opened up, but I was relying on information from the state. And we can't make decisions at a local level. It has to come from the state. I know that she had just purchased the gym with another woman. And to have it shut down a month and a half later was devastating to her business. And it continues to be devastating as the weeks tick on and she doesn't have the income coming in.
All right, Cindy, we're going to do another social media post.
Try to get more people signed up for a virtual membership.
Yep. Here we go.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Fitness Unlimited.
Beth and Cindy here.
So, we're just asking one more time.
Please continue to support us through the month of May. We're busy here trying to get things ready for opening, whenever that may be.
When I spoke to Beth on the phone, I could hear it in her voice how aggravated she was that there were different sectors that were opening up, and she still is waiting for the governor to give her permission to open.
The start of Phase 3 will allow additional sectors to reopen with guidance and protocols, like gyms, fitness centers, and museums. Indoor gatherings will be limited to 8 people per 1,000 square feet, but should not include more than 25 people in a single enclosed indoor space. Outdoor
I don't understand why we can't take our club and bring it outdoors safely. And nobody can give me a good reason why we can't. There's no good reason. That is discrimination, in my opinion. Plain and simple. It's discrimination. It's not fair.
I would be completely devastated if that gym failed because it's one of the only all-women's gym in Massachusetts. I really don't know of any others. And it's not just that, it's the people that are there. It's like a family. Everybody's so supportive. I mean, you have people that have been through cancer, breast cancer survivors, and there's certain programs for them. It's also a wellness center. And I think it would be really devastating for a lot of members if that should happen, and I pray it doesn't happen.
People understand what small businesses are going through. It doesn't matter what type of small business. Every small business owner that I've spoken to is scared. They're worried. They're concerned.
Our homes are on the line.
Our homes are on the line.
We had to, I borrowed from my
That's
retirement.
our collateral, yep.
And we put our homes up for the collateral.
Yep, because
So I can't fail.
What's the worst thing that can happen? We don't have a home. I mean, it's kind of bad.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man. I can't breathe. I've been trying to help out. So I can breathe a little bit more.
There are alarming new statistics showing the pandemic is taking an especially heavy toll on minority communities. In Illinois alone, more than 40% of those who have died are African Americans, even though only 15% of the population is Black.
There is a statement that's often made in the Black community that says whenever white people get a cold, Black people get the flu. Because it's like whatever, little thing impacts whites, it impacts Blacks so much worse.
We have disproportionately high infection rates, hospitalization rates, and death rates. Can you help me, first of all, make sense of why that's happening, how we can make up 13% of the country but such a high number of infections?
The African American community is more likely to be in a job that does not allow them to stay at home and do teleworking. Most of the time, they're in essential jobs.
We saw with our own eyes that our patients who are Black and Latino were at far greater risk of contracting the virus and of getting really sick from it. This was because these are our essential workers who are being exposed. People who work in transportation, people who work in our own hospital cleanliness department, the people who deliver our groceries, the people who work in the grocery stores and the pharmacies, they can't really take a day off. They're out and about and being exposed, and they're getting sick.
COVID-19 is a leveler. It affects everyone, except there are many people that are having adverse reactions, and more are dying because of the injustice in society, because of the unequal nature of society.
So when the racial numbers started to be reported, it was shocking, but yet not surprising. The social determinants of health impact people of color much more deeply. People are in housing that is maybe not as good for their health. Perhaps the blood pressure is higher, the levels of lead, for children are higher, asthma is higher, kidney disease because of high blood pressure is higher. So these are populations that are already at risk.
That's one thing that COVID is helping us see, the cracks in our society, the ways we don't support one another. The fact that the essential workers are low income, a lot of folk are low income folk, they're not given much, they don't have a lot of benefits, and they're the ones that are keeping us alive. They're the ones that are putting their life on the line in order for us to stay healthy or try and keep healthy.
See, when white lives are being lost, then people jump into action. When Black lives are being lost, it's, one of those things. I have to confess that as a man of color, particularly a Black man, most of what I hear, I process it through a lens of race. And I process it through a lens of race because I'm very practiced at that.
Step out of the vehicle and step away from me, all right? Step out and face away. Step out and face away.
Okay, please don't shoot me. Please, man. I can't breathe.
You're talking.
You're talking fine.
Deep breath.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
The nation erupted into scenes of chaos, violence, and widespread destruction into the early morning hours.
I cannot let my guard down enough that I could believe that if I were stopped by the police, that I would necessarily be able to get home that day. It's hard to be Black in America and not feel some form of stress. I mean, stress in all the microaggressive ways that we come across it. In interviews for jobs, in going, waiting for service as a customer. All kinds of issues exist, and in their own way, they just kind of pull at us. They just chip away a little bit every day. It's just a little something.
I believe COVID-19 had a huge role in what happened with the Black Lives Matter when George Floyd was murdered senselessly and just tragically. It was building on the backs of the tragedy COVID-19 was for Black and brown people. And people for the first time saw health inequities and, oh my goodness, they're so more deeply impacted by this than we are as people that are not of color. So they started to see that there's systemic things that are happening that impact people differently. So I think it was all building, and that's why it was such a huge explosion of outcry and just people really seeing systemic racism for what it was and what it is, and being really moved to say, no more, we need change.
This is absolutely teaching us, love your neighbor as yourself. We have to ask ourselves, how is it that we survive together? We have to believe that we have a longing for healthier ways of living, for better, more equitable systems, for a justice-centered community. We have to believe that we can do that.
The thing that I really believe is that in order to make a difference, you have to last. So I want to last as long as I can in order to try to make a difference. I want to be able to talk about this is what it looked like then, and this is what it looks like now. I was able to see this, and now I'm able to see that, and I've got to last in order to make that happen.
I have seen change, and I do believe that more change is necessary, and I think we're a wonderful example of how things can be. And we've definitely got some work to do, but I think there are organizations in Milton that work with the schools, that work with the police, that work with town government to make change and to be positive agents of change as a town that could be a model of success.
The worst is yes ahead for us. It is how we respond to that challenge that's going to determine what the ultimate endpoint is going to be.
In late February, as the reports from Italy were coming in, we had a pretty good idea that the virus was heading our way. We saw a ton of people who had virus symptoms, who we really believed had COVID, and they didn't meet criteria for testing. They hadn't been to China, to Spain, or to the Biogen conference, but they maybe had traveled on a plane. Maybe they had friends who'd been to the Biogen conference. And we realized, oh my gosh, the virus is now in the community being transmitted.
Maybe 30-40% of people with COVID-19 infection are asymptomatic and don't know they have it. And there's lots of cases of healthcare workers bringing the disease home. It happens quite a lot.
Concern is also growing for doctors and nurses working tirelessly to help COVID-19 patients and contracting the virus themselves at an alarming rate. 140 employees at one hospital alone, the Brigham and Women's in Boston, testing positive. Matt Gutman has much.
I would say I was a little bit anxious about taking care of some of the patients with COVID-19, just because it's a new thing. You know, at the beginning we were told, you know, different messages on what to wear when we would see the patients. And as we learned more or saw more situations, we would be told to use different PPE. And, you know, you'd be afraid when you'd come home. What do? You have a family at home. So a lot of us were afraid.
I feel horrible because I feel like every day I'm leaving work, I'm going to be bringing this virus home to my family. And how am I going to live with myself if I get my whole family sick and they end up in this same ICU that I'm working in? And I looked up hotels, I looked up Airbnbs, and I was like, should I be at home? Should I be exposing my family to this?
It was a scary time. I tell people I've never been on a ship out in a storm, but that's what it felt like. Our staff, everybody was scared, I think, just to make sure we were prepared. Yet there was also this sense of that we'll get through it, and there was an incredible and inspiring sense of we will work together and we will do it.
I was at home on Easter, and later that evening I had a low-grade fever. And I knew as soon as I had a low-grade fever that was probably COVID. And as a nurse practitioner, I did have an oximeter at home, and I started checking my oxygen level. And the normal level is in the 90s. Most people are 95 to 100. And I looked at the level, and my oxygen level was 80. So at that point, I said I need to go to the emergency room. And so then I went to BI Milton, and they admitted me, and I was there for almost 2 weeks.
Our peak was actually about 2 weeks before the Boston peak. And for our size hospital, we saw a disproportionate number of COVID patients. So the Beth Israel Lahey system consists of 13 hospitals. We're probably the second or third smallest in terms of number of beds, but we saw the fifth most number of COVID patients.
I was pretty anxious when I found out that I had the COVID to begin with, because I did need oxygen, and I was there for almost 2 weeks on oxygen. So every day I would get a little nervous, and more nervous probably, because I kept thinking, oh, I'll only be here 3 or 4 days and then I'll be home.
We had patients that were in the hospital for 20, 30, 40 days, between the ICU and back to the floors and eventually home.
I would turn the TV on, and I was very excited to actually be able to watch TV, because I usually don't have time to do that, and without somebody wanting to change the channel on me. And everything was COVID. So every channel I turned on, it would talk about COVID deaths, very depressing, and they'd have the depressing stories about people that were dying from COVID, some that were on respirators. Sure, I was scared. I don't know if I was going to turn the corner. I kept positive and kept thinking I would. But in the end, you don't really know. I was always afraid at night, especially because I'm alone in the room and wondering, will I get up the next day?
Sometimes, a nurse would go in and hold somebody's hand. They told us to limit our physical contact with our COVID patients as much as possible, but with gloves on, with a gown, with the N95, with a shield.
It was also depressing being in the hospital because, no one could come in to see you. And the nurses would come in on a very limited basis, so very isolating.
So usually when we have patients that are actively dying, their whole family is there. They want to be there. They want to hold their hand. And I think the hardest thing with this has just been that these families, for the most part, can't be with these patients. So that's been a really heavy weight on the nurses, is that we're here, we're their family. I'm holding their hand as they're passing away.
I just thought, listen, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to think positive. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to take one day at a time. I know I can do it. I'm going to do whatever they tell me that I need to do to get better and think positive. When I knew that I was, getting better and had turned the corner, I felt such relief. I felt that I was going to get home. It's just going to take me a little while to get back on my feet, to go back to work. And so when I finally did come home, I was home probably for about 2.5 weeks or so, just regaining some strength, some endurance with my breathing, and eventually did get back to work.
During the storm, it was just about surviving and taking care of each and every patient. But something that kind of caught on at this hospital, and I know across Massachusetts, was really celebrating the many, many patients who went home. Of course, COVID, there was more death than we've seen in this hospital in many years, and that was really hard. And I remember talking with staff about, particularly some of our younger nursing staff who hadn't dealt with this, and it was a challenge.
It has definitely been a change. I feel like I am not a college kid anymore. It's kind of been a very abrupt switch into, that chapter of adulthood. I don't know if there's ever gonna be, oh, it's over, this is the end. I think this is an issue that we're gonna struggle with for a long time. This virus isn't gonna go away, kind of like the flu. But I think the big things are finding better treatment, and especially finding a vaccine, which, isn't always an overnight thing.
I think we're realizing that nothing's going to be the same again in a lot of ways. We will continue to probably have this virus in the community fluctuating in levels of severity for the next many, many months, and until we, God willing, get a vaccination to create herd immunity in the communities. So I think our lives, our practices, our professional calling has been really permanently impacted.
It's caused a lot of chaos. So I'm hopeful that they will have a vaccine soon. I'm hopeful that people will get the vaccine once it comes out, and that we can curb the numbers. I think we've done a great job in Massachusetts, and hopefully the rest of the country can sort of follow that role.
I think one of the saddest aspects of the pandemic is that it was predicted. We had a really good idea that it was just a matter of time before some mutated flu virus came along, or, some Ebola type virus came along that was transmissible enough. It could cause a huge problem. And I think the saddest thing is that we knew this, scientists knew this, and they alerted everybody, and there was some effort made towards preparing us for that and getting the public health infrastructure in place so that we wouldn't get hit quite so hard. But politics interfered, Politics interfered with that preparation. Politics has continued to interfere with that message. And it's so sad to me that we had the knowledge, we had the prediction, we had the warning, we had time, and we couldn't get our public health infrastructure together.
Michael Richard Daly, Vanessa Marguerite Coyne.
My name is Margaret Haley. I go by Maggie. I am 18. I'm a senior in high school. I will be attending the University of Vermont in the fall. I first heard about the pandemic in biotech class. I just never thought it would just cross the sea and come all the way to us. I never felt it was possible for something like that to happen. I don't know. And then once, that was in December, and then once it started to pick up, spread to Europe, that's when the kind of, oh crap, oh whatever moment kind of happened in my head, and I said, oh no, this is real. This could potentially get to us, which is really scary.
I think it was Italy that closed schools, and then a couple other areas closed schools, and so we were like, oh, what does this mean for us? But it wasn't really until early March when we started to see the momentum really shift towards the possibility of closing schools. And then that decision came very abruptly.
Now, given the evolving data regarding cases of COVID-19, and out of abundance of caution for the health and safety of children and school staff, I'm ordering a 3-week suspension of school operations for educational purposes at all public and private elementary and secondary schools.
None of us, when we left on March 13th, at the end of the day, thought that we would be out at that point in time for the remainder of the year. At the minimum, we thought it would be 2 weeks.
Today, our administration is announcing that all public and private schools will remain closed through the end of the school year.
It was just heartbreak, really. There's no other way to describe that feeling when you realize that you can't go back to school. And not just back to school, but just back to your friends, back to your teachers, back to some sort of normalcy in your life. And, that kind of goes through your head, and then what what also goes through your head is just all of the things that you're going to miss, you know? So there was graduation and senior night and senior breakfast and awards nights and all of that stuff, and you kind of you realize what you're about to miss out on, and that makes it even more heartbreaking, I think.
I think the students took it well initially, and I think that they were hopeful about the return on May 4th. But once the governor said for the remainder of the year, I felt a little bit of disappointment, frustration. I felt angry. But then after a couple of hours, and I was open and honest with the students, I had to reel back, and cooler heads prevailed, and I had to say, well, this is done with safety in mind. And when everything's said and done, those are the things that I never waver on and I don't compromise. It's health, safety, and security.
The thing that I'm most gonna miss out on doing is graduating normally. You know, I just really want to see my friends walk across that stage. Not just myself, you know. My family will be able to see it, but not seeing, not seeing some of the people that I've been in school with since kindergarten finish that strong, that's gonna hurt a little bit, for sure.
Alan Dye.
So graduation has been a hot topic. Our plan right now is to honor the graduates on June 7th. We would having a caravan-style graduation ceremony. Students are going to be advised to come in a car with their parents. Only the senior gets out of the car. They're stopped 25 feet prior to the front entrance, prior to the red carpet. The student will get the diploma. So the only thing really that was missing, if you look at every single component of the graduation, the only thing is missing out of that is us coming together, all sitting in unison in the field house.
Dear classmates, let's just say it's been a ride. I wrote a letter to my class just to, I don't know, make myself feel better. Just talked about what I'm experiencing, what everyone's watching. The word watch is in there a lot. I feel like I've spent most of my time just watching this whole thing unfold, kind of unable to do anything about it. You know, we watch not only what is going wrong, but also what people are doing right. And I felt like that was an important point to make to myself and to my class, so I felt the need to kind of write that down. So in its own terrible way, the coronavirus has showed us what humankind is capable of. It is showing us what we must go out and be a part of once we are handed our diploma. Though this task may seem daunting, I have faith in us. Why? Because the best thing that will come from this pandemic is us, the class of 2020. The strength it took to wake up before 11 and sit on Zoom calls for hours as our senior year slipped through our fingers. The fortitude it took to smile and say, "I don't know," when someone asked what the plan was for graduation. The dedication we had to keep each other sane over FaceTime and long walks as we watched school close for 2 weeks, then 3 weeks, then a month and a half, and finally for good. It is this grit that will allow our class to become successful business owners, brave healthcare workers, dedicated essential workers, engaging teachers, or the kind and generous, whatever it is we choose to be, Americans. And in some twisted way, we have COVID to thank for that. However, I want to thank you all for an incredible 4 years. Although the last quarter did not go as planned, hang on to this strength that has blossomed in quarantine. You never know when you will need it next. Your classmate, Maggie Haley.
Bye.